Welcome to the Tim Black at Night Show. I'm so glad to have everybody show up. Thank you so much for being here on time because you know I'm only doing this because I have a special guest. When I say doing this, I mean me being on time. I'm on time. I'm on time because of my guest. Someone I've been trying to get on the show for a while. She's such a busy person. Her name is Abby Martin. She's an investigative journalist. She's traveled the world, and she's come to share her experiences with us and what she's learned. Give it up for Abby Martin.
Woo! I
There
like
it
that.
is.
I need sound effects.
That's it, man. Look. I need to. I'm by myself, so I got to do what I got to do. So Abby, look. Let me jump in and just say, first of all, we love what you do. You restore faith that there are investigative reporters out there giving us real news, and we just appreciate your work and your work ethic. And
Thank you.
you've been doing it for a long time. Is that true, Abby?
Indeed, yep. Ever since the Iraq War, I just knew that media was so controlled and lying to us, and so I felt like you need to be the media, right? Because media, of course, is the most effective tool for social, political, economic change. So I knew that I had to do it. You know, Tim, probably the same reason why you're doing what you do.
I did it. I did it for dates, but no, not the same reason you did it. No, I'm joking. I did it because I always dreamed to do it and have
Yeah.
my own show. When I was a kid, I said, you know what, I want to be a radio disc jockey. Or I want to have my own talk show or something. And luckily, fortunately, I got back to it. But that's the first question. Actually, a friend of mine at the One Skater, he asked. He says, "Can you ask Abby Martin what is the most rigorous part of becoming an investigative journalist?" So let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not very rewarding, you know. I mean, it is, of course, because every story and meeting every person who you can tell that story and bring their story to the masses, of course, is rewarding. But it's hard work. I mean, it's a lot of thankless work, let's say. Long hours, work never stops, and I think that that's when your passion bleeds so much into what you do professionally. It never ever stops, Tim. I mean, there's so many more things to say, so many more stories to tell, so many more things to cover. So it's hard, and I think a lot of other hard things about it are just the constant attacks. People who don't like what you're saying, especially when you're an advocacy journalist like myself, and you put your opinions out and lay them bare. I think a lot of people get offended. They don't like that style of journalism. So it's tough in that respect if you're saying things that people don't like. You can
Yeah.
get attacked pretty viciously.
Yeah, yeah. Explain that a little bit. You said advocacy journalist. I don't think I've heard that term before. What does that mean?
So starting off as an anti-war activist, and I feel like I don't like tiptoeing around objectivity. I feel like objectivity is BS. I don't know if we can swear on here, but I throw all those out the window. And I think that was one of the benefits of me not going to journalism school and having kind of this rigorous training of how to be a journalist. And you need to have, you need to say what Monsanto thinks before you can say what the farmers think. And I just totally think that that's a farce. And I don't think that we need to hear from the empires lying about why they're doing what they do in order to call them out as liars and say, the people's perspective, the grassroots perspective, the marginalized and oppressed. That's what we haven't gotten from the victors writing history books this whole time. And so I feel like we need to turn back the clock and really retell these stories from the eyes of the people that were most affected, Tim. And so I feel like advocacy journalism is, again, such an important tool to lay bare what you really feel. There's no hiding behind the stories that I tell. Everyone is pretty clear where I stand on those issues. Take it or leave it, love it or hate it. That's just who I am, baby.
Wow, wow, so impressive. Um, I was thinking when you were saying how you go. I know for a fact you go to these locations and you saying it's a risky job or a tough job, and it's not very. If you're looking for, it's not a way to get rich, and it may not be the best way to see the
For
world.
sure.
I don't know if you think it's a way. It's not a definitely you're not on tour when you go to these places. Is there a threat of physical harm when you do what you do?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. When we were in the Amazon covering the Chevron case, we talked to people they think Chevron mercenaries actually killed their family members for speaking out against what they did to destroy the Amazon and leave millions of gallons of toxic sludge and oil water just lurking forever there. And then, of course, in Palestine on the ground, I mean, it is a total war zone, such an aggressive, in-your-face police state. I had rifles pointed in my face multiple times. I mean, you really, really see how brutal that really is, and kind of gives you insight maybe why more journalists don't go to report from the West Bank. They just like to go to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So
just wait to get the cables back and let them tell us what's going on the
yep.
ground type of thing, huh?
Yep. Exactly.
I mean, and I was looking at No Dapple. I was looking at what was going on in North Dakota, and I was like, wow, one guy's show, I'm like, if I go, I won't be able to broadcast my shows and how I'm going to keep everything running. And of course, I thought about the element of the police being there and being out in cold weather and not having fortifications or whatever. But your thing is like a whole nother level. Like I didn't want to go to No Dapple because I didn't think I was prepared. How do you get prepared to go to Israel or go to Palestine or to go to, I don't know, all these places that you have listed here?
Well, Tim, I mean, geez, didn't some woman almost lose her arm or leg in North Dakota? I mean, dang, our militarized police they're training with Israel, so you better believe that they're using the same tactics. Totally brutal militarized police force we have here. So it is absolutely insanely dangerous. Look at what happened to Scott Olson and that woman at No Dapple. So give yourself credit. It's definitely insanely dangerous too in the U.S. when it comes to our over-the-top police. But to prepare for Israel-Palestine, I think the biggest thing that I didn't know was how hard it is to get in. I mean, we were simply with some girl on the plane. We weren't even with her in the trip. She was some blonde girl from Florida, looked like some, high school cheerleader, and she was banned for life from entering the country simply because she had an Arab 101 language book in her bag. She was called an Arab sympathizer. So, I mean, this is in a country where Arabs live and speak. So, kind of understanding, okay, we have to wipe our phones, wipe our computers. I mean, it was such an intense situation to even try to prepare to get in, of course, especially since I was already on Israel's radar multiple times by the government. And, so that was a little tricky, but we might be banned for life, unfortunately, Tim, because of what happened when we were there. They caught on to us being there. They banned us from Gaza, and hopefully we can get back in because, man, what a gorgeous, gorgeous country Palestine is.
Wow. Well, you said they banned you for you weren't sneaking guns in. What were you doing that they would ban you from being there?
Yeah, you would imagine, one of the worst human rights catastrophes in the goddamn world, which is Gaza, and we can't, American citizens that we're paying for their misery with our tax dollars, we could not even get in and report. Neither can Israeli citizens. They have this censorship apparatus on lockdown where you actually need to go through the Israeli military if you're an Israeli citizen to even get any sort of truth out about what's going on with the occupation. And, you had to go there to apply for a press pass, and they responded saying, "You're not a journalist, Abby, you're a propagandist." What? So, if you're not 100% pro-Zionism, pro-Israel, then you are considered a propagandist in the eyes of Israel, and you could be banned.
Wow, a propagandist.
Yeah, for daring to see Palestinians as human beings, essentially.
That's remarkable. As I was trying to prep for this interview, I was doing some research, and I tell you, and let's be totally honest with you, Abby, this is one of the issues. Palestine is one of those issues that to me, it's just so heart-wrenching, right? And I think I speak for a lot of people. Once you get to, it's like a car accident. You don't want to view it. Like, I know for some people, gosh, how can I put this? It's just so abhorrently wrong. Like, what's happening to these people is so horrible. It's like once you dig into it, it makes you say, what do I complain about? You know what I'm saying? Like I heard you mention one thing on our friend Lee Camp's show, and you said how here in America, when a black person is shot by the police in the street, we rally or we march or we do demonstrations. But you witness something totally opposite, which is when cops who do the shooting get killed, that's when they hold rallies, that's when they hold protests. Could you talk about that?
Absolutely. I mean, look no further than Elor Azaria. He was an Israeli soldier in occupied Hebron. It's the only settlement that was literally built in the middle of a thriving cultural center and expanded outwards. So it is 100% the most visible apartheid I've ever seen, brutal occupation going on. And a soldier, just because this targeted killing and assassinations are so institutionalized and normalized from the top down, soldiers do this all the time. Of course, this was one instance where it was caught on camera. So, of course, the international community was in an uproar. This human rights organization named B'Tselem released this video of a soldier essentially just executing an unarmed Palestinian man who was already wounded, laying on the ground. It is absolutely brutal. The blood is running down in a river, and people are just walking by as if it's a daily occurrence. I think that's the most disturbing thing about it, is no one even really reacts to it. Since that happened, at first Elor Azaria just got a slap on the wrist, house arrest, with the ability to see his family and visit everyone. And because people were so outraged at that sentence, Israeli society was so outraged that he got such a slap on the wrist that they went out in droves, tens of thousands of people, Tim, pouring out into the city centers to protest the reaction to Elor Azaria. Absolutely unbelievable. And really, the government tries to downplay how fascist the country really is by saying, oh, these are just extremists. So there's just a couple hundred people in the square. Well, we've seen the video footage ourselves. My friend Dan Cohen and David Sheen, who were living on the ground. One of them was an Israeli citizen. The other one's just a Jewish American who was there filming these rallies. People will go up and attack you if you have cameras. Leftist is a slur. He heard chants, kill the videographers. I mean, kill the Arabs is a common chant, but kill the videographers, because there's a saying there, Tim, that Arabs are the common cold and leftists are AIDS. That if you don't get rid of AIDS, you can't get rid of the common cold, because they see that leftists are the biggest, basically, pillar to resist their final solution of ethnically cleansing all Arabs from the land. And it is so fascist. I mean, seeing these rallies is bone chilling, to see how many people come out in support of these soldiers who do this. But after so much outrage from the international community, Elor Azaria is charged now, I think with manslaughter. But yeah, people are not happy about it at all. And they're also saying, you're using him as a scapegoat, because everyone does this, right? Wow. This is taught.
Wow. Okay, so he gets house arrest, they riot, they march, they protest. Then he gets charged, and it's like, you can't just charge him. You got to, everybody, it's so common that it's.
Exactly.
And see, that's what I mean by it just seems so overwhelming. Like it's the lack of humanity, I should say. It just seems so overwhelming. It's like, I don't even know where to begin, but I do have a couple of questions. And I think one of the questions, Anoa Changer from The Way with Anoa, she said, I should start off with this because you brought it up. Divestment, like in South Africa, would put pressure on this, to end apartheid. Does that make any sense? Like, why hasn't America moved to that, or why hasn't UN nations moved towards putting pressure on Israel to do the right thing here?
My God, that's a great question. I mean, look at what happened to this UN official who released a report using the word apartheid for the very first time in the UN agency about Israel. And he resigned because there was so much pressure. The UN had to come out and say, oh, we had nothing to do with this report. That was some fringe outlier who wrote this. I mean, it is so insane, the international pressure, because, Tim, it all comes back to the U.S. empire. I think that the situation would be completely different if the U.S. just wasn't such staunch allies and completely funded this brutal occupation and apartheid state. I think that BDS is the only way to move forward, and I honestly know that now after being there. And I think that after being there, and I mean, I spoke to dozens and dozens and dozens of Israeli citizens, because I kept wanting to find people who could comment on the two-state solution, who could comment on, how there's hope for change within Israeli society. But unfortunately, talking to so many people, you realize how far right the country has gone over the last 30 years, where people are normal now and mainstream now that were considered completely insane wackos. Hey, sounds familiar, right? Now we have Christian evangelicals running our country. But no, it really is. You look at South Africa, white supremacists are never going to stop and say, hey, you know what? We're white supremacists. We're racist as hell. We're going to actually stop apartheid. No one is going to do that. They need to have forced from outside the pressure to make them change. That's the only way they can, Tim, because after talking to dozens and dozens and dozens of Israelis, like I said, leftist is a slur. To be considered liberal and in the Labor Party, you just want a more humane occupation. There's no ending the occupation. There's no legitimate two-state solution. It's just, oh, yeah, Palestinians are treated horribly. Maybe the occupation should be more humane.
What is this about home? Like, they would take people's homes. Like, Abby, I'm sorry, I don't get it at all. You put these people into tents, then they end up in caves, these like stone homes, and then now they come in and take the homes. I'm totally not getting it.
Yeah, so in 1948, when Israel was created, right, it was this colonial settler state just literally created on top of a country in the middle of the Middle East. Great idea, guys. Plop a European settler state right in the middle of a bunch of Arabs. What could go wrong? Oh, my God. So, of course, the next year, there was a full blown war, of course, because when you do that and you ethnically cleanse tons of people, obviously people are going to be upset. So, there was a lot of friction. But then there was a massacres on behalf of the Israeli militias and the official military at the time. I mean, tens of thousands of people fled. That's when you hear this whole right to return as a refugee, because the original borders of Israel, they've been so much, the West Bank was originally given to Palestinians, and it's been annexed so much where you look at the West Bank now, I think everyone's seen that kind of map where it's like in 4 sections or 3 sections where you can see the original state of Israel, and to today, it's just dots. I mean, that's how much more land that they've annexed. And so, yeah, they started off in tents for a long time. And I've talked to some Palestinians who said our biggest mistake was actually leaving these tents into these official concrete UN buildings because people stopped seeing us as refugees. He was like, we should have stayed in the goddamn tents, because then at least the world would look at us and say they're still homeless. They cannot return to their homes, that literally settlers would come and steal homes, and they would be living in tents just 3 miles from where their house was taken over by settlers. So, I mean, they've been living there ever since, and they just say, I want to go back to my village 5 miles away, and I'm still waiting for people to help us do that. It's devastating.
Wow. Gosh, so I guess this question by Benjamin Dixon doesn't make much sense, but I ask it. How much less likely is it? Oh, Benjamin Dixon of the Benjamin Dixon Show, by the way.
Yeah,
guys.
Benjamin Dixon.
That's my guy. He said, please ask Abby some questions for me. So, and Ben's a great friend to help me out. He said, how much less likely is a 2-state solution now that Trump is president and Netanyahu seems extremely happy about that?
My God. I love Trump during the campaign trail. He's like, we're going to make a great deal. We're going to make the best deal Palestinians have ever seen. Everyone's like, what the hell are you talking about? So everyone was kind of waiting with bated breath to see what the hell Trump was going to actually do. And now we know, Tim. He is the best thing that Israel has had in a long time. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is the director of a foundation that donated 60 grand to just one illegal Israeli settlement. So that with like 1,300 families living in it, all the settlements are illegal in the West Bank. But that just goes to show you that even his son-in-law is directly financially invested in one of these illegal settlements. So how the hell can he broker peace? I mean, Trump's like, oh, my son-in-law is going to broker the best peace deal you've ever seen. Well, he's also financially invested in illegal settlements. So it's totally crazy. Trump is so nuts. He's talking about moving the embassy to Jerusalem. I mean, he appointed David Friedman. Right. Let's talk about that. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem that would seal the deal for Palestinians, because Jerusalem, when it was originally divided, let me quickly explain, when the partition happened, when people talk about a 2-state solution, Palestine, as it stands right now, is not just one piece of land. It's a bunch of pockets that Israel has basically taken over and maneuvered, where Gaza is one strip over here, the West Bank's over here in a bunch of dots, and then you have Jerusalem, which is like an international city that where Palestinians and Jews coexist. So to make a state out of these disparate land masses makes absolutely no sense. They would still have to cross all these checkpoints and roads controlled by the Israeli military to even get to their land if that state was formed. But Trump, my God, David Friedman is even more right-wing and hardline than Netanyahu himself. He says, hey, annex the whole West Bank, remove it all, take it all from Palestinians. What could go wrong? He totally supports the settlement process. And if you ask any Palestinian, even right now, they would just say, just stop building settlements, for God's sake. Just stop. We could maybe live with you guys being here, but you just want more. You just keep taking more. And the whole Jerusalem thing, as an international city, if Trump did move the embassy there, that would be declaring Jerusalem as basically the capital of Israel and completely remove any agency of Palestinians whatsoever. And they see that as kind of sealing the deal on the end of the peace process, Tim.
It's just, I don't know. I know I heard that, I heard Trump talking about one minute he was like, well, a 2-state solution. Then he was He went the other way. He's like, no, they should work it out and live together. And then he's like, but whatever they want to do is whatever they want to do, which I thought was code for whatever Israel wants to do is what he's going to go along with, just based on
Oh,
his
hell
body
yeah.
language.
Oh, hell yeah. Did you see that weird press conference where he's sitting there with Netanyahu and Netanyahu's like, the art of a deal. He's just like standing there. He's like, right, Trump, the art of a deal. And he's like, where's Jared Kushner? He's like looking in the audience. He's like, hey, boy, what's up? He's like, I've known you since you were a little kid. It's like, this is the press conference that you guys are talking about the peace process? I mean, it's mind blowing.
It's also kissing butt to all the people in America, the folks who want us with Israel, all of those, a lot of Republicans, I don't know, a lot of Democrats as well are very supportive of Israel, right?
Oh my God. I would say 99%. I mean, I was stunned to hear one of the only Jewish politicians, Bernie Sanders, was one of the only people to really bring up Palestinians as human beings during the campaign. And of course, Keith Ellison, we know that how he was slandered about that as well. Yeah, I would say 99.9% of all of our elected politicians have to be pro-Zionist because, we have the largest amount of Jewish citizens living in this country next to Israel. It's just one of those things that goes along with the territory, Tim. If you are a patriotic American, well, then you better be a patriotic Israeli supporter as well and a fervent supporter of the Zionist project. Because if you're not, well, then you're an anti-Semite. That's the narrative that's spun to us. I didn't even know what Palestine was until I was 18 years old. What the hell's wrong with that picture? My God.
Yeah. Yeah, and I look, I'm not ashamed to admit it, man. I like just because of the bad reputation, like the slam that that you get when people talk about it, it's like something even independent media wants to shy away from sometimes because it's a huge backlash. Like I know I'm gonna get trolled for a long time. I don't care now though. Like I'm grown up now. But like when I first started, people would ask me, Tim, what do you think about Palestine? I'd be like, and they were just like waiting to hear what I say because these people like go berserk, like. We're talking about like vitriol, like people like really pissed. And I'm like, why is this so toxic? But now I see it's like, it's so one-sided. Like,
oh man, totally.
It's mind-blowing.
And it hurts. It hurts to be called, like an anti-Semite because I'm like, I love Jews. I have so many Jewish friends. I sound like the white. So I have so many black friends. No, I mean, it is so true. Like it does hurt because they know how to get you, it's like they know how to hit you where it hurts the most by saying like, accusing you of something that's so horrible of being anti-Semitic. And it does work for a lot of people where they don't even want to deal with the label. They would just rather not cover it. It's that third rail issue. Why even risk losing my job when dealing with this issue? I'd rather just not. And I think that's how a lot of people, they just self-censor.
What about Noah Changa from The Way with Noah Changa? Let me put that back up. Noah said, she asked this question about AIPAC. They had a protest over the weekend and whether she thinks actions in the U.S. and abroad will have an impact on the condition in Palestine.
Absolutely. And I think that's the only thing that will have an impact, Tim. You mentioned BDS before, that was the only thing that was really able to end the apartheid state of South Africa. And that is the only thing that will be able to end the apartheid state of Israel. The thing is, politicians in the U.S. are preempting like the zeitgeist, this culture of resistance against the occupation, that they are actually preempting passing legislation against BDS. In New York, Cuomo is trying to pass this bill. I mean, it's stunning. And across Europe, too, they're making it illegal to have Palestinian rallies. It's shocking the level of criminalization just simply for solidarity with Palestinians because of the stronghold that either the Israeli lobby or the U.S. empire or both has on these institutions. I mean, it's just stunning. There's no institution fighting on behalf of Palestinians. That's for damn sure. So it's up to the people. It's up to people's power only.
It just seems so strange, Abby, because we're so supportive, I would say in America, of Muslims. Like we're dead against Islamophobia. We are, look, the present administration aside, right? I'm talking before Trump. Before Trump, like the way I looked at it was like we were trying to support, Muslims. But meanwhile abroad, we're funding the people that are doing atrocities and human rights violations to the hilt, and people don't talk about it. And I'm wondering, like you said, it's politicians can't talk about it. I'm thinking journalists can't talk about it too often either.
Absolutely. And you just mentioned something really interesting. we like to pretend like we support Muslims and people of color here. Tim, look at what we've been doing around the world for the last 15 years, bombing 7 Muslim countries. I mean, good God, we've been killing tens of thousands, a million Iraqis alone.
But we don't want,
It's stunning.
but Abby, look, we don't want to ban them on planes, so we're good, right?
We don't want them to fight us over here, right? I mean, it's nuts. So it's like this whole culture of Islamophobia. People act like Trump is this aberration who came out of the blue. No, it's been fostered and normalized for quite a long time with the mass spying apparatus on Muslim communities, the registry, and the bombing and civil rights erosions for Muslims around the world on behalf of the U.S. empire.
Yeah, we bring that up a lot about, the 7 countries we've been bombing, and how no one was outraged. At least you didn't hear anyone talk about it in an outraged fashion on mainstream media. But the moment someone said, hey, we need to, give a 90-day reprieve on, bringing folks in the country and have a ban on that for 90 days or whatever, people freaked out. And I was like, let's be a little consistent here. Either we're going to support people or we're not going to support people. Either we're going to support Muslims or we're not. And it's like, it just seems like, I don't know. I know it had to drive you crazy after visiting these places and seeing it firsthand.
Oh, man, the partisanship drives me nuts.
The refugee situation. I want people to really feel, as best you can, like, what's the life like there?
Yeah, so this is a huge part of Israel that I had absolutely no idea about, Tim. I mean, I just went over there thinking, okay, I'm going to go to the West Bank and report on Palestinians. And then Dan Cohen, the guy that I was mentioning before, told me about this whole other side of it. I had known, of course, that there are Ethiopian Jews living in Israel. Of course, Israel likes to tout itself as this multicultural, ethnically diverse country that hosts Ethiopians. And look, they're in the military and they're hanging out with the white Israelis. But when it comes down to it, Ethiopian Jews are treated very poorly. When you look at the poverty rates and the discrimination against them is just stunning. I think 52% of Ethiopian Jews live in poverty, but then you look at America, my God, half the country's living in poverty too. They're only basically 2% of the population, yet they experience a lot of racism. And I was really stunned to learn that there was actually a eugenics program against Ethiopian Jews, where they were inserting Depo-Provera birth control shots, injections into Ethiopian women coming over, and not telling them what it was. And their birth rate actually dropped 50% from 2002 to 2012 because of this eugenics program. But that's just the Ethiopian Jews living there. And they actually, in 1973, a rabbi was like, all right, Ethiopians can live here now. You guys are technically Jewish too, come over here. So they had all this weird rescue operations where they brought a bunch of Ethiopians there. But the birth control thing really shows you that this is about something else, that they want to appear ethnically diverse, but really they are about trying to control the birth rate and try to keep maintaining that white ethno-nationalist state, Tim. But the refugee situation is stunning. So Israel is a place where it's a refuge for victims of Holocaust, right? Victims of genocide. Come here, escape persecution. Oddly enough, it's turned into the worst country to accept refugees almost. There was a lot of refugees coming in from Sudan and Eritrea that you should hear these people's stories. I mean, God, escaping Darfur, escaping Eritrea, where you have mandatory conscription, where it's like essentially indentured servitude for years and years. And once they finally make it through Africa, make it through Egypt. Mind you, a lot of it was during like a horrible time in Egypt too. They make it through. I talked to one guy, Ali, who, he was in prison in Egypt, and then they finally make it to Israel because they hear Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. They it's a refuge for Holocaust survivors and genocide survivors. So they all go there thinking that they will at least have some sort of ability to create a life, to create some sort of value for their families. And they get there and they are thrown in prison camps. There is what Israeli officials have actually called a concentration camp. I'm not just saying that lightly. That is what Israeli officials have called this. It is on the border of the desert, in the Negev desert, in the middle of the blazing heat, on the border of Egypt, where there is the biggest prison camp of its kind. I know that America has bigger prisons, obviously, but this is the biggest prison for refugees of its kind in any institutionalized country in the world. And it houses about 3,000 refugees at a time, males only, because they want to separate them, once again, controlling the birth rate. They keep these people indefinitely. I heard that people were actually up there after over a year. They just keep extending the time. They keep them in these prisons. If you refuse to be detained at this facility in Holot, then you actually go to a legitimate prison across the street. There's a prison. And they check into this camp. It's essentially a prison camp. You have to check in like 5 times a day. If you miss one of the check-ins or curfews, you just go to prison. And on top of that, it's just horrible that there's nothing for these people. The food is terrible. They live in absolutely inhumane conditions. And not only that, but Israel's conducting military exercises constantly, essentially re-traumatizing genocide survivors with military exercises. Every morning they wake up to artillery shells and bombings around the camp. I was at the camp and I was just stunned at how this is even legal and happening. Right. And it was passed by the Supreme Court because people called these people infiltrators. Tim, I even went to an anti-refugee rally in Tel Aviv where people were saying the most crazy racist stuff I've ever heard, saying that they wouldn't even call them like human beings. They would call them infiltrators and said that they're just coming here to rape, pillage, and commit crimes. And when you talk to these African refugees there, they just want a life. They just want to live. I talked to one of them who said, they basically are trying to make life such hell for us that they're trying to get us to self-deport. And he said, I'm never going to do that until they're committing genocide against me. I have to be here because I can't go back to the hell I came from because I'm going to die. So I'll stay here until Israel's committing genocide against me. And that's what they do now. They built a giant wall in Trump's wet dream. Now barely anyone comes across, but now they still have to deal with the people that are already there. So they've already blocked them from living in the main cities. They force them out in this desert, and they're just trying to make lives a living hell for these people. It's absolutely insane.
Where the fuck is the UN?
Like I said before, man, look what just happened to that person at the UN. And right before that, the UN finally made that arbitrary thing about the settlements being the UN's. Look, the UN is toothless without the U.S. empire really setting the stage here. And it just seems like it's all just symbolic horseshit. And, this UN official who finally said the word apartheid, dared to say the word apartheid, and he's gone. That's how insane the stranglehold over the narrative is.
Abby, you blowing my head off.
I know, it's nuts. It's nuts.
Eban Kim from Bright Path Media, my friend Eban. Thank you, Eban, for this question. He says, since George W. Bush, have you seen a difference in the treatment or historically compared to Barack Obama? Like, was there any, different, I guess I could say, what major differences were there between the two? And now Trump, I guess. I don't know.
It's hard to really differentiate presidents because they've all been so constant on the Israel line. I would say that Obama was hated more probably because he was black, let's be honest. And we know that Israel is really about white supremacy. That's really what it comes down to, because there's plenty of European immigrants living legally and illegally in the country that they don't care about and they don't send to camps at the edge of the desert. So I would say that Obama was probably not liked for a lot of reasons. It was also probably because he didn't want to just blaze into war with Iran immediately, that Netanyahu was really irked by him. I mean, for God's sake, when has another leader of a country come to Congress and usurp the president's authority to give a speech to Congress? That's what Netanyahu did during Obama's term, to actually just talk shit about him. So that was fascinating. It really shows just the gall and arrogance of the leaders of Israel to do that. Bush, I actually read, but you know what? Actually, I will say that even though Obama symbolically kind of did the thing about the settlements and there was that kind of rift between him and Netanyahu, Bush actually did kind of issue condemnations about the settlement stuff way more than Obama did, surprisingly. And I think Bush Sr. did too. So at the end of the day, I mean, let's take all those symbols out of the window and just see Obama was a very staunch supporter of Israel, and so was every predecessor. But yeah, it's amazing when you see that at the end of his presidency, despite that rift, Obama awarded that the biggest aid package in the history of Israeli-U.S. relations, to the tune of over $30 billion, I want to say. And what was really interesting about that bill is that I was really confused about it because I was like, why? Israel has this giant military-industrial complex themselves. They actually have been the number one premier weapons manufacturer and seller to India, to a lot of other countries. They're almost competing with the U.S. at this point with their militarism in terms of the weapons manufacturing. So what the U.S. did with that aid deal, not only did it kind of secure the relationship again, but it also made it mandatory for Israel to buy weapons through the U.S. through this aid package. So it kind of reconfigured the control that the U.S. has over Israel. Because a lot of people say, oh, Israel controls the U.S. No, it's the other way around. We use them as a battering ram in the Middle East.
Got it. That, you know what? That sheds a lot of light on it for me, actually. Because
Yeah.
there's always have to be an incentive in it for us, for
Yep.
whatever we do, and that makes a lot of sense. So they kind of guard the I don't know, the hens. They're the wolf guarding the hen house for us while we're over here doing our thing. They
Yep,
keep people in
exactly.
line. Okay.
Yep, you see other wars in the past, the 1967 war, we used Israel as a base essentially to carry out different operations. Yeah, and because a lot of people are like, what the hell is the U.S. getting out of this relationship? I mean,
Right.
it's
Right.
crazy. Why are we doing this? And I think that really shed some light on it. I heard that from Iran Afrati, a former Israeli combat soldier who mind-blowingly just reveals the full truth about, he's the real terrorist and not the Palestinians. But he's the one who told me all that stuff about the arms deals, and I was just shocked. But then again, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah. Money. Money
Money.
money at the end of it. Money at the end of it.
Exactly.
As I hear you talk more about it, and I did see the video where there was the wall, and like I saw that some people, one man was telling you his story of a young man who was shot near the wall, and then they damaged the wall, so they locked people up for like 6 months, and it was like a little crack in the wall. It was like nothing really damaged. It was like cosmetic, sort of like what Jill Stein did when she wrote in spray paint on the crane, and it's like, oh, we need to lock her up for that. It was something really small. It's like, obviously, these Israelis don't see the Palestinians as people. Like, they don't see them as human. It seems to me. Is that a stretch? Am I being too hard on them? But
No, I mean, you almost have to. I mean, in order to have that rampant racism and that indoctrination to such an extreme, you have to see them. And this is what Iran talks about extensively, is you are taught from birth that these people are subhuman, that they're animals, that they are always trying to kill you, right? So you automatically see them as less than you, and so you will treat them as such. And when you have that ultimate power and authority, I mean, every Israeli is conscripted into the military. And so not only are they raised from birth and in their education systems to hate anyone who doesn't hate Arabs, essentially. They bully on people who don't agree with them. There's been countless anthropological studies like in Israeli school systems and understanding how this racism is bred. But not only that, but I mean, then you're militarily trained, right? And it's even more barbaric and harsh. And then you're sent out into these zones where you have just total, complete authority over someone else's life. And that's intense. But, being in that camp that you're talking about where that giant wall is, it's stunning because even little things like water, like we take for granted. I mean, Palestinians get like a water tank per month, and, think about dividing that up between a family of 20, and you have to cart the water from a well, and then Israeli soldiers will just arbitrarily come. This camp almost gets raided every day. And Israeli soldiers will come, they'll shoot skunk spray, which is like a rancid military manufactured spray that will infect the water supply. So that's just torturous methods that they do on a daily basis to Palestinians to make their lives complete and total hell.
And this is to make them do what? To leave? They got a wall. How can they leave? Even if they wanted to leave, where are they going to leave to, Abby?
They want them to die off, okay. I think is leave or die off.
As you were describing that, and I'm assuming so, Israelis don't see themselves as horrible people. I was thinking of the term cognitive dissonance. Like, the only way you can treat people that way is if you demonize them to the extent where they aren't human. Because if not, how can you see yourself as a decent, religious, spiritual, being based on their religion anyway? You can't hold those two thoughts in your head at the same time. So these people have to be the worst people on the planet, and somehow to justify. I don't.
It's so hard to. Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? Like to understand how, like a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, there has to be hope within Israeli society. There has to be like masses that are against this. And I just think that, first of all, a lot of people who think the way we do, Tim, leave because they can't stand to be in a society like that. And that's because it just continues to get more right wing. And because all the liberals and leftists flee and leave, a lot of these people have European citizenship. They can go to multiple countries. They're not just confined to Israel. So they have the ability to leave. And why the hell would you want to stay in such a white supremacist, racist country if you are more culturally minded and accepting of other people? So I think that's part of the reason why it's become so much more vitriolic, so much more fascistic and militaristic, is simply because the people who don't agree with that are forced out of society. And, like I said, when you're bred from birth to think that Arabs are subhuman. And, that guy Iran told me something really interesting too, because there's a lot of Arab Jews living amongst Israelis. And he was saying, you can be a European Jew, you can be an Ethiopian Jew, you cannot be an Arab Jew. You have to completely remove and shed that identity and be the most xenophobic, racist Jew of them all because you're Arab. So you already have to prove yourself that much more. And he said that Arab Jews living in Israel are actually the most racist of them all because they try to completely rid themselves of the Arab label.
Wow, I'm thinking of Stephen from Django right now, like how far you'd have to go to be gosh, yeah. There's no
Or
correlation.
Some Jewish Nazis.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Give it up for that. I didn't even think of that. I'm applying everything.
And gay Nazis.
Yeah. Milo comes. Gosh, man. God, I lost my thought there. This is the thought. This is what I was thinking. What about the international community? Like, I hear all the time how these other countries like Sweden, Australia, they have large Muslim populations. Are those people are Syrian refugees, or help me out here, Abby. What does Sweden, what does Australia say about Israel? Forget the U.S. I know we're on a take.
Question.
What about other countries?
I think other countries are way more open. Like, you see BDS campaigns and pro-Palestinian groups that have existed for the last decade in these other countries. You've seen politicians from Sweden, Australia speaking out on behalf of this. Absolutely. It really all comes down to the censorship of American press that don't tell us that these people are speaking out against it, and and not seeing the rallies and the solidarity. I mean, God, when the Gaza massacre was going on in 2014, I think thousands of people in the streets of Europe on behalf of Palestinians. So it's definitely way bigger, more popular around the world. But they look to America ultimately and say, hey, there's absolutely nothing we can do as long as America is propping this country up with over $3 billion in aid and military might every year. I mean, there's really nothing you can do until the U.S. stands up, until U.S. citizens stand up to their own government and say, we refuse to support this insane situation.
And you know what? You need to tell them, Abby, that we can't stand up because we got sellout media. Like, yeah. I tell people all the time, it's like the media is the most powerful thing we have in this country. I mean, if people knew if everyone could hear what you're saying now, and if everyone became educated on this, they'd be concerned. I fundamentally believe that people are fundamentally good people. And Absolutely. They have no idea. You know what I'm saying? And if we don't have media telling people, like, for instance, the 7 countries we were bombing over the last 8 years, most people had no idea. They just knew about Iraq. Like, they didn't even know we dropped bombs in Somalia. They didn't know, like, they had no clue. So when you bring it up, it's like they get negative. It's like, well, what are you talking about? You're talking bad about Obama, because I'm like, the first time they've heard it is coming from me, and he was a black president, so they kind of freak out and lose their shit a little bit. But I'm like, no, dude, this is what was going on while you were watching him do the dab or watching his wife, dancing on Ellen or whatever. This is what was going on across the world. They just weren't telling you. So how can we help lead the international community if we can't wake people up because we have a media that's sold out?
Oh God, man, that's the.
Oh no, asking Abby like
question, you know what I'm saying?
I'm asking Abby why she's got all the answers. Like, you've been there, Abby. You know what we got to do. Just tell us what to do, Abby.
Shit, let's go. Let's go storm the Capitol right now. I mean, seriously, it all starts with people like us, Tim. People need to become the media, citizen journalism all the way. We have the tools at our fingertips. I mean, more capabilities now than we ever have to utilize the internet, utilize these apps on our phone. I mean, film any injustice that you see, stand up for your brothers and sisters who are being oppressed and marginalized around the world. If you see anything, stand up, speak on behalf of them. Speak out. There's so many other people who believe in these things, especially in the Trump era. We have a huge ability to bridge this gap, to reach out to each other, and to really build the momentum here, because Trump is a fucking nightmare. And I think people are waking up for the first time, which is great. Welcome to the party, baby. We've been fighting the U.S. empire for a long time. Come on board. Join the fight. But like you said, the media, it all comes back to the media. And I think that one of the great things about this is that I think a poll just came out that 67% of young people do not trust the mainstream media at all. They do not watch the corporate media. If they do, it's probably to make fun of it. And so that is huge, right? So there's this huge opening for independent journalists to seize that energy and not let these alt-right platforms like Breitbart and InfoWars take that energy and take it. It's interesting because Bannon and other people have taken and hijacked that kind of like sentiment where a lot of people are disenfranchised and with the system and are living in poverty, and they just blame the symptoms, right? So they blame immigrants and refugees and people who are already oppressed and marginalized and say they're the reason why you're suffering. They're the reason why this country is screwed. So we need to really redirect people over to the real enemy here, which is U.S. empire, militarism, imperialism, colonizing these countries and usurping the sovereignty of countless nations around the world. Meanwhile, thousands of people are dying from the system of structural violence that is continuing with our economic system.
Booyah. Booyah.
Boom!
That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. Hold on, guys. That's the boom right there. Look, guys. Abby, I want you to tell people where to go. Now, they see their Twitter link. Tell people where to go to find out more about you and also about your show. I mean, you do two shows, 3 shows? How many shows you do, Abby?
So I do a podcast with my brother called Media Roots Radio, available on iTunes and Stitcher. But my main show right now, with my partner, Mike Preiser, we work for Telesur English, which is a Latin American conglomerate, of course. Once again, it's corporate or state media, right? Unless you're donation based, Tim. It's a really hard climate out there. So we're doing a weekly documentary series where we are trying to tell the stories that have been backpaged, that have been censored from American history books, and telling the stories from the people's eyes, the people's perspectives of what's going on in the country, what the U.S. empire does, reporting from a world shaped by war and inequality from essentially the American empire. So it's on Telesur English, and you can check it out at theempirefiles.tv. We're huge fans of X-Files, so we thought that kind of worked together as the title.
That's excellent, man. Empirefiles.tv, Media Roots Abby. And look, Abby, you are amazing. You are a serious fighter for truth and justice. I got your back. Anything you need from me or my audience, you got a message you want to get out, just let me know. We want to just support everything you do. Give it up for Abby Martin one more time, guys.
Thank you so much, Tim. You're amazing.
I'm trying to catch up to you, Abby. Anything you want to tell the people before you leave? Any last word? I don't know. I want to let you have the closing statement.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, again, the time is ripe. Don't be oppressed by fear. That's exactly what the establishment wants. They want us to be terrorized. They want us to be fearful. They want us to be dividing and conquering each other. No, we need to unite. We need to form that multicultural progressive front. We need to mobilize en masse in the streets. It's the only thing that's ever changed policy. It's the only thing that's ever moved this planet, and we need to be a part of it. The time is now. Get out there, guys. Let's do it.
Wow. Abby, you need to lead rallies. That's what you need to do. Wow.
I'm pissed. I'm pissed.
You are passionate and you got the goods and you know your stuff. And I told everyone, I said, Abby's going to come over here and kick some serious butt. They thought I was playing like, oh, she's going to be nice, and be kind with everybody and just give you lots of information. No, not at all. Thank you so much, Abby Martin.
Thank you so much, Tim.
I appreciate you. I'm going to text you the link to the show and do with it as you wish, please.
Thank you so much, Tim. Rock on, everyone. Peace.
You know it. Thank you. That was amazing. 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 Hold on one second, guys. I want to say some more words about Abby while she's gone. I just want to say, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This was a very important show, and this is what being independent media means. Means we could bring Abby Martin on and talk about something that she probably won't get to talk about. What I mean, probably. If Abby could get on MSNBC or CNN or a huge outlet, and that's why she would want to do it, because she cares a lot about the mission of helping these people. Advocacy, journalism advocacy. She'd be doing it. But the doors are closed. And that's what we're so about, man, is getting awareness on issues that matter. Of course we got to live indoors. Of course we got to make enough to take care of our families. But we can also talk about important issues, get the word out, and help our brothers and sisters, whether they be here in America or whether they be abroad. I truly believe in it to the bottom of my heart, and I know Abby does. So I want to give a shout out to Abby Martin once again for being here and sharing her time and sharing her heart and sharing some hard stories, to telling those stories again. I also want to give a shout out to Lee Camp for just having her on and then reminding me, oh yeah, let me go back at Abby, let me try to get her on again, because there are people who care, guys, right? And we're doing the best we can to use all our resources, what we have, to the better good. I want to also shout out everybody who gave questions. Anoa Changa from The Way with Anoa. Ben Dixon from The Benjamin Dixon Show. Ebon Kim for Bright Path Media. My man Bon Kim. Always call him Ebon. Bon Kim. Always see the E. And also at that one _skater1. Follow him on Twitter. That's at that one _skater1. Follow him on Twitter. He did send me a question. Thank you, Skater1. All right, guys, go subscribe to everybody I just mentioned. They supported this show. They made sure I didn't look crazy up here with Abby, because Abby is full of information. I got to be able to hang with her. Give us some good questions so that we get the most out of this opportunity. So give it up to my people, Ben, Anoa, Bon Kim, and just keep the love around. This video will be broken down into segments and more digestible pieces, so that it'll be easier to share with your friends and family. So please do so. That's it, guys. I'm Tim Black for TBTV. For TBTV. And though I'm upset, I'm frustrated, it kind of hurt my heart a little bit, too, to hear about these people's situation. We got concentration camps. And it just puts a lot in perspective, doesn't it? I'm not saying our issues aren't real issues. Dead is dead, right? Poverty is poverty, but I can't, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I'm just saying it just puts a lot in perspective, but also the same white supremacist ideology that's occurring in Israel is occurring in the United States and other countries as well. It just manifests itself in different ways that make it harder to spot. So that's another thing that's going on, and that's real talk. Hit me up at TimBlackTV.com if you got suggestion ideas for show ideas. VIP Tim Black's Patreon group, thank you so much for all you do. We got more coming. And let me announce, because there's no show tomorrow, before you leave, Thursday I have my friend George Webb. Oh yeah, I told you I was going to give you some great stuff. George Webb, a great, great journalist. He is speaking the truth every day. And I just talked to him. We sealed the deal. He's definitely going to be here Thursday. So tune in for that. Until we talk again, do me a favor. Don't you let nobody take your cornbread. And stay strong, stand tall. Peace. Tim Black. Tim Black. Tim Black. Yes, I am. True. Funny. Tim Black. I am TimBlack.com. Tim Black.